Dynasty rookie profile. Today we're looking at wide receiver out of Florida, Ricky Pearsall, one of my favorite prospects in this draft class. If you're new to the channel, give us a like and subscribe. We're putting out Dynasty content all year long. And if you've never seen one of these videos, we have a bunch out on a bunch of running backs and wide receivers from this rookie class. We're less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. And, we're looking at some of the well-known guys, the bigger name guys, but we're also looking at some of the lesser known guys. I'd say Ricky Pearsall at this point is probably one of the better known guys in this draft class. He's not one of the top maybe 5 or 6 receivers, but a lot of people know about him because he has been getting a lot of hype lately, and deservedly so. So let's get into it. Looking at Ricky Pearsall, going over the numbers here. He's 6'1", 189 out of Florida. Like I mentioned, look at his 2023 stats: 65 catches, 963 yards, 4 touchdowns. Now, when you see those raw numbers, it might not look that great. You're kind of like, meh, why is this guy so special? If you tend to look at raw numbers, and it's fair, production is important when it comes to evaluating guys. That's one of the few similarities like almost every fantasy relevant receiver has had over the past 15, 20 years, and maybe in the history of football, is that they're pretty much all productive in college at some point. Some not so much, but these numbers, the 963 yards, 4 touchdowns, that was actually 26% of Florida's passing offense last year, which means, they didn't have a high volume passing offense. He was accounted for over 26% of it. So still really, really good numbers and pretty productive basically the last 4 years at college. He's kind of projected to be a round 2 to round 3 pick, probably in round 2, I'd say. We'll see. We'll see where he goes, but I see a lot more mocks having him in the round 2 than round 3. We see his combine numbers here at 4.41 is a good 40-yard speed. His 10-yard split, not so great, 1.57. We like to see that a little higher, closer to 1.55. Shows initial burst and how fast are you within the first 10 yards, which to me is a little bit more important than judging just a 40-yard. No one runs 40 yards straight, right? Most routes are run 10 yards or less from the line of scrimmage. We want to see this a little higher, but again, it's not the be-all, end-all. Broad jump number of 129. Actually, he kind of killed it in basically every area. His vertical, his 40, his broad jump, his 3-cone and his vertical were all in like the 90th percentile, and his broad jump, his 40-yard, and his shuttle were all in the 80th percentile or higher. So really good numbers there from Ricky Pearsall at the combine. We look at production numbers over here. A little hard to see maybe. There we go. Career dominator. Again, dominator for receivers is the percentage of a team's passing offense, essentially. How many passing yards and passing touchdowns was he, or receiving yards and receiving touchdowns was he responsible for? Over his career at Florida, he was responsible, he played at ASU as well. His career in college at 19%. However, this number is brought down quite a bit. His first year at, I believe, ASU, his first year at Arizona State, he was only 2% of the team's offense. From that point on, he was at least 15% or more. And his last 3 years at college, he was 25% or higher of the team's passing offense. So if you take that 2% out, this career dominator is much higher, closer to, I think it's above 25%. If I'm doing, actually it's like 23% or so. Single season high of 28%, which came his third year at college. His breakout age of 21 is good. It's not great. It's okay. Again, this is their first year of having a dominator of 20% or higher. How old were they? He was 21. He is a little bit older. I believe he's just double checking his age here. Ricky Pearsall he'll be 24 essentially when the NFL season starts. So a little bit older, but again, if you're drafting him in the second and third round, I think you can live with that. His best PFF receiving grade was 79.6, which is above average, but it's not like spectacular. So what do I like about Ricky Pearsall? Well, you look at some of the analytical numbers. Yards per route run is okay. It's 2.23. It's not like amazing. It's okay. His ADOT is good enough. It's good in that range of, okay, you're not just a deep threat and you're not just a gadget behind the line of scrimmage guy. You're somewhere in between, which is what we want to see. His drop percentage of only 3% is obviously fantastic. Teams love it when you don't drop the ball. So that's really, really good to have a drop percentage of 3%. Anything under like 8% is really good. So, to be at 3% is absolutely awesome. Yards after catch per reception, we see here at 5.8, which I believe, is below average in college, but it's not like a terrible number. Contested catch percentage at 50% is really, really good to see. Really, really good to see. The fact that he was catching 50% of his contested catches. Now, what's great about Ricky Pearsall is he actually didn't have a lot of contested catches. Only 6% of his targets, his catchable targets, were contested, which, in my opinion, this is a statistic that I'm going to start following more closely. Is this number here, this contested target percentage. What percentage of your targets were contested? Now, that's not all on the receiver necessarily. Sometimes it's on the quarterback and not throwing them in the proper spot. However, what I think this represents is their route running ability. If a receiver has a low contested target percentage, I believe a lot of that's going to be due to their route running, because you're getting open on your routes, right? If you watch a guy like Xavier Worthy or Ricky Pearsall, you see them run routes and no one's within 5 yards of them. That's a lot of that is because of their route running, and Ricky Pearsall is one of the better route runners in this draft class, in my opinion. This number being 6 is kind of ridiculous. Anything under 15% starts to get my, it starts to become on my radar. Under 15% contested target percentage is really, really good. Ideally you want to be under 20%. Again, you're under 50%. That's like, that's really good. He's at 6%, which I believe is the lowest in this entire draft class. 16%. Now, 6%, excuse me. One thing to note is I believe about 27 or 28% of his targets were behind the line of scrimmage. So it's a lot harder to contest a pass when it's behind the line of scrimmage, right? For a defender, it's almost impossible. Not quite impossible, but it's very, very rare to do so. Even if you take that out, though, even if you don't even include the behind the line of scrimmage passes, he still has a very low number. I forget exactly what it is, but it's still quite low. So this number, guys, pay attention to it. There's a few guys in this draft class that have a very low number. Guys like Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy. These guys have quite low numbers. And then there's a couple guys that have pretty high numbers. Guys like Keon Coleman. Actually, Marvin Harrison Jr. has kind of a high number. I don't think we're really worried about him, but something to keep in note. To combine that with catching 50% of those targets is awesome. Again, it's very small sample size because he didn't have that many. Yards per route run here by scheme, looking more into this as well. The NFL is moving towards a little bit more of a zone coverage scheme. You just look at the numbers. Teams are running much more zone coverage than they have in the past. So you want to see generally a higher number or a good number against the zone. Obviously, you want to be good against man and zone. If you're good against the truly elite players, if you go back and look, are really, really good against man and zone. These numbers here, the yards per route run by scheme, they're okay. Anything above 2. At the worst, you want to be at 2.5 or higher. I'd say, especially for zone. He's right at that threshold, Ricky Pearsall is. So his yards per route run number is not like spectacular, what you would expect from potentially a really good player in the NFL. But I do think a lot of that is part of the offense he was on. Florida hasn't had great passing quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson and guys like that the last couple of years, which I think, and even in the beginning of his career with Ricky Pearsall, and Jaden Daniels is one of those guys. And we know that Jaden Daniels really didn't become the passer he is until his last year at LSU. So then we just look at his stats here. He was out wide, 172 in the slot, 260. So more in the slot, but he can play out wide. There's 3 guys that are kind of grouped together, in my opinion, because of 1, where they're going to go in the draft class, and 2, people's perception of them. It's Ladd McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, and Roman Wilson. Now, Ladd McConkey could be a first-round pick. Ricky Pearsall and Roman Wilson are probably second-round picks at best. But all 3 of those guys, they're kind of being perceived as slot guys. and what is their real ceiling when it comes to fantasy football. I don't really think that for all three of them, to be honest, especially with Ricky Pearsall. I think he can play on the outside. His contested catch percentage shows it. His ability to get open. He did play on the outside in Florida. And he has the size. I don't think he's just strictly a slot guy, which is what you want to see. Now, you want to be able to play in the slot. The truly elite fantasy players, a lot of them are guys that can move all around the field, right? I think Ricky Pearsall can do that. I really do think so. So there's a lot to like when it comes to Ricky Pearsall. His combine numbers are off the chart. His production was good, even at a school where they didn't throw a lot. I don't think he's going to be, necessarily this elite top 5 receiver, but man, I think he comes into the NFL day 1 or week 1, whatever, and he's going to be on the field. He's going to be on the field. Maybe he'll be in the slot. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Julian Edelman type of player, and he just made his living in the slot, right? Absolutely made his living, and he was really, really damn good. He's tough. He's tough over the middle of the field. He can make catches in traffic, no problem. Really, really fantastic route runner. Now, his long speed isn't amazing. His initial burst isn't necessarily amazing. He could probably be a little bit better as like a blocker. His run after the catch is okay, but his hands and his route running and his toughness are awesome. And that's what you need to really survive over the middle of the field. But he has a really diverse route tree, in my opinion. He can run all the routes. And I just think, man, if he gets on the right team, Ricky Pearsall, he could kind of be a team's de facto wide receiver 1. Now, again, maybe it's surrounded by other players who are putting up similar production. I don't think he's like CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase level, but kind of like how Julian Edelman was the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots, right? It wasn't like 1,500 yards. It was like 1,100 yards, and you're surrounded by a bunch of other guys with similar production. I could see Ricky Pearsall being this, so I really like him. I'm going to be curious to see where he goes. I hope he gets second-round draft capital to a good team. I'm thinking about a team like the Colts, who are really going to scheme him some plays where he can get touches, teams like that. So that's kind of all I have for Ricky Pearsall, unless I'm missing something. Just double checking if I am missing something. I think this idea of him, being a slot guy only is overrated. I think he can win on the outside. And man, he was so good. His best production and his best grades came from down the field, middle. His middle. What am I trying to say? His deep routes and then his like mid-tier routes. That's where he really dominated the most. He's fantastic at like these post routes, these out routes, these in routes, crossing routes, things like that. So really love Ricky Pearsall overall. He's going to be a guy that I'm going to be targeting, in the mid to early second round of my dynasty rookie draft. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, like and subscribe. We'll be back with more content.